Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Bridging Careers. I can't believe it's our final day. We've had a week of the most amazing and compelling speakers with our practical, unbelievable afternoon sessions. So today is the 9th session out of our 10 sessions. And before I get started, I just really want to start by paying respects to the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. So I'm Yvonne Kelly. I'm the founder of Glow Up Careers. I had a crazy idea back in the beginning of COVID that I wanted to put a wish list together of all these amazing people in my network and people that I admire, that I've been listening to podcasts and following, and really wanted to, help people who've lost jobs, feeling uncertain, feeling stressed or isolated. And I think we've really hit the nail on the head, and we've had such following. We've had over 1,000 views of our first session. We've had 1,200 people subscribe. It's just been phenomenal, and it's all been done through the power of people volunteering and helping. All of our speakers have volunteered their time. Cisco put a whole team of volunteers, and we've got numerous people behind the scenes helping out. So it's been a big team effort. We really wanted to highlight the importance of inclusion and, making sure that we're looking at and assisting people in the community that are maybe doing it tougher at this time. So I'm the founder. I'm Yvonne Kelly, the founder of Glow Up Careers, and we're a social enterprise. We launched on World Refugee Day last year, and really with a mission to make sure that people could access career coaching for everyone, and that really it's up to you to manage your own career. And I was listening to a podcast this morning that echoed that we have to take responsibility for our own career and take charge, understand our strengths and our passions. And that's all what this session is about today, is really looking at, how can you follow your dreams, and maybe if you've been adversely affected and you have to switch into a different career, turn that into a positive and find something that you love doing that you can switch into. That might take a little bit of time to get there, and we'll talk about how you do that in this session. So it's going to run for 60 minutes. We've got a beautiful panel of experts here to speak with you, and an amazing moderator. So if you'd like to share a comment on social media, we're using the hashtag BridgingCareers, so hashtag BridgingCareers. We'll also be live tweeting the event, thanks to the lovely Alison Hallworth. And our Instagram account and Twitter handle is @GlowUpCareers. So share those tweets. There'll be lots of gold that will come out of this discussion. Make sure you tell us what you think. We've got a team of our coaches. We've got 2 Alexes and Chris on hand on YouTube today to help you out. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a little chat box. Pop in questions. Happy to ask the panel questions too, so I can make sure that we get those questions in there. And we'll get straight into this session. So I'm really excited. As I said, when I had an idea about this event and took it to Tony Beeston at Cisco and said, hey, do you think we can make this work? I thought about all the people through the last year and a half since we founded Glow Up that could really speak on this topic. And I've curated, and as I said, all of these this panel have volunteered their time. So we'll start off with Michelle Duval. So Michelle is the founder of Fingerprint for Success. And if you watched our Tuesday session, you may have met James Hayes, who's a coach at Canva, and Canva mind tool that helps to identify strengths and entrepreneurial skills. We use Fingerprint for Success with the individuals that we coach, and it's so good to have Michelle here today. So it's also an exciting time for Michelle, and they're launching the world's first personal AI coach. And Michelle herself coaches a lot of the top level entrepreneurs around the world. And she's also been an author and has featured in many books and is sought out in media around coaching. And Glow, great and wonderful partnership and collaboration, and I'm actually doing their accreditation in December, so yeah, looking forward to continuing. And you know, Michelle really cares about people and the importance of working on your strengths and really building those out. So thank you and welcome, Michelle. Next we have Nikki Brown, and Nikki was recommended to me or introduced to me by so many different people in my network. You know, everyone I met when we were launching Glow Up was like, you have to meet Nikki. She's so awesome. She's she's got such a passion for helping people and a real you know, really genuinely cares about developing people and giving them the best opportunities. So Nikki is a HR expert. She sits on as a New South Wales State Councillor for ARI, which is the Australian Human Resources Institute, and has worked across companies like Deloitte, Fairfax Media. And today we really want to gain her insight into, you know, how you maybe transition into different departments or different jobs within those large corporates. So yeah, welcome Nikki. Thanks for joining us. Now, next we have Will Phillips. Will is amazing, and Will is also one of our Glow Up accredited coaches, and just such a big part of our community. So Will is the outcomes manager for head of outcomes for Academy XI. So Academy XI is this awesome college that an education provider that provides courses on skills of the future. So we'll explore. I've only started learning some of these terms like UI and UX, which is user experience and user interface. But Will explain all of that and what it means. But they're doing, yeah, really innovative stuff in helping people from all backgrounds to pivot into skills that are going to be needed for the future. Will and his team, you know, they support these students through the courses with their career and helping with getting everything aligned so that they actually have a job at the end. At Glow Up, we have an online tool that we use to help people with their resume and cover letter and LinkedIn, and Academy XI and Glow Up have partnered to ensure that every student going through Academy XI has access to our program, and Will helps with career coaching, making sure that they get the best outcome that they want and are really happy with. So yeah, super excited to have Will. He's also so passionate about graduate recruitment, and he's an advocate for LGBTQI rights and gender equality within the tech and the design industry. So Will, thank you for joining us. And last but by no means least, we've got Jacinta Tynan. Jacinta, I've been such an admirer of yours, and Jacinta's author. You know, I'm just so appreciative, Jacinta, that you've given time when you're writing a book at the moment. And I know, yeah, you're so busy getting that written, and you've gone out of your way to give us time today to be part of this this initiative. So thank you so much. So Jacinta is one of Australia's most experienced news presenters and journalists. So a lot of you may have seen Jacinta for many years in Sky News. She also produced and hosted Changemakers, interviewing people and organisations making a positive difference in the world. And I think Jacinta was introduced to me by Alison, who just has such a passion for refugees and helping and making a difference. And Jacinta has that same passion. So she's published 4 books and her 5th on the way. And you know, one of them is Mother Zen, Some Girls Do, and her 5th book is about a celebration of single motherhood. She hosted the podcast The Mother Shift and is the patron of Sister to Sister, a mentor program for teenage girls, and is an ambassador for Bernardo's Mother of the Year and Monkey Bag Kids Theatre. So Jacinta, I know we've got lots of parents and mums that are joining, and a lot of our panel members as well. So Jacinta, thank you so much, and thank you for moderating this session to you, and I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you so much, Yvonne, and I think it's my pleasure to be involved. And I think the other thing that makes me very appropriate to be here today is that I have also lost my job during the COVID downturn. We're calling it the COVID downturn. I think I just made that expression up. So I've also experienced retrenchment and pivoting careers and trying to reframe and rebrand and all of those fabulous terms that are now part of the vernacular. So I'm also interested to hear what's going to come up today. So it's a very unconventional setup. I'm actually at Alison's house, Alison, who you mentioned, who has kindly lent me her lounge room because I'm so untech savvy that I didn't know that I could possibly do this myself from home. So thank you to Alison again for that. All right, let's get cracking, shall we? So as I guess segueing perfectly from my own experience, we know that COVID has wreaked havoc across many, many industries. I don't think any industry has not been affected by this. And we've seen a lot of people displaced from industries that have been shut down, and they've had to pivot to new careers and completely change what they were doing. They can no longer rely on the systems that they've and the experience that they've built up over many decades for many people. So I'm going to ask all of you to suggest what are the main things that people can do to move into a new career. We're going to maybe pick 3 things. So Nikki, I'm going to start with you. Nikki, of course, from the Australian Human Resources Institute. Nikki, can you narrow it down, 3 things that you suggest people can do to try to move into a completely new career?
Absolutely. I think the first of the 3 things I'd really recommend is start with yourself. So sit down and spend some time to really think about your strengths, your capabilities, but also the things you're passionate about, things that are meaningful to you and bring you joy. And really think about those skills and capabilities and passions in a transferable sense. So, how might they transfer into different industries or organizations? The second piece of advice I'd provide is do some research, have a think about some of the companies out there that are experiencing growth or maybe not as impacted by the COVID downturn, as you coined the phrase, and really look at their corporate websites, look at their LinkedIn pages, really do some thinking around those companies and where your skills, strengths and passions may have some alignment with those organizations and industries. And the third piece of advice I'd provide is don't be scared from kind of getting some external insight as well. So speak to trusted people, whether they are within your initial family network or friends network, or maybe it's within your professional network, and get their insights on you as an individual, but also get their insights on what they're seeing happening around the market and around the different companies and industries that they interact with. So that would be my initial kind of 3 pieces of advice.
Oh, such good advice, because it is about that looking outside the square, isn't it? And also, as you say, we hear about all these industries that are struggling, but the money's going somewhere. The people there's still needs somewhere. So some industries are actually thriving at this time. Michelle Duval, Fingerprint for Success is your company, of course. Can you tell us what your 3 top tips would be for people trying to move into an entirely new career?
Yeah, as a coach, coaching people, I've been coaching actually for the last 25 years, and career transition or dealing with redundancy in any circumstances is obviously a really significant topic that happens in coaching. The first tip I think I would give is to first go through a process of acceptance. The times that we're currently in are really shocking for everybody in very different ways. And it's very hard to move into the phase of creating the new adventure or the new career or just meeting your needs financially, given the circumstances. And it's very hard to do that when you're in the shock and the grief of the situation that you're in. So the first step is critical, is to emotionally embrace, be with that, be with the grief, the loss, the shock, the anger, the frustration, and the fear. And we talk about that from the lens of acceptance. Acceptance means I don't like it, condone it, or want it, but these are the facts of what's going on, and I'm going to be with the reality of the circumstances. Until we can be with that reality, we can't go into that creative space of figuring out the new. So step 1, bring acceptance. The second step would be, it sounds kind of counterintuitive, we have a big focus in career around skills and experience. Where we really drive our focus at Fingerprint for Success is speaking and thinking about what we call your motivational traits, or what we might call your work style. This is more what you might also call soft skills and soft abilities. When we think about career transition and we think about transitioning, we want to think about the skills and experience most definitely. But here's the big deal. those skills and experiences, often the future of work, are not going to be the things that are needed. For example, in our company, Fingerprint for Success, we just 12 months ago hired a new role that never existed before called conversational designer. That's the person who build artificial intelligence coach, and it's a new role. Now, we couldn't go and map some skills or experience because no one's done it before. And so guess who's in the role doing that? It's a wonderful man from Chile. His name's Pablo, and his background was as a vet and as an architect. Who would have thought, right? But what he has is the transferable attitudes of moving quickly, big picture thinking, highly creative, architect and so on. And it's the attitudes and motivations that are transferable to his new career. So once you tap into what Nikki was saying, around what are you passionate about? What are your attitudes? What are your energies where you get the most fulfillment from, and what are those applicable to in other industries that you've never ever considered? I'm so excited that Will's here in this session, because Academy XI are amazing and helping people to be able to look at careers they would never have imagined. And it's definitely in this genre of being able to go, hey, I've got this big picture thinking, or I'm super detail orientated. What would that be appropriate to in the future? So that tip two is transferable attitudes and motivations, not necessarily only your skills and experience. And the third one is to actually set some goals. It sounds like a real cliche, and you think, oh God, everyone talks about bloody goals. But in reality, until you put a line in the sand and say, hey, I want to go after that thing, it's very hard to zoom in your focus. One of the things that's really overwhelming when you're in a transition is all of the possibilities, all of the options. And some of us have a bias to want to try and keep all the options open. The problem is, if we do that, we're scattered, we're putting energy to everything and not really getting to anything. So I really encourage you to say, okay, this would be my goal after, like Nikki said, self-awareness, understanding what your passions and your drives are, looking at some new career opportunities, and then setting some goals around those. Now, that might be a big career goal, but bring it back to what's manageable and in your control immediately, which might be, my goal today is to send out 3 reach outs to my friends who might have some doors that they can open for me. So make the goals small and achievable.
This advice is just gold. What was that job you said that Pablo got? The conversation
designer.
Conversation designer. See, I would have been good at that. If only I'd known.
We might hire you too.
I think that sounds perfect for me. Will Phillips, Academy XI, tell us your top 3 tips for people trying to move into a new career altogether. Will, you're on mute if you can hear me. Okay, I'm not hearing Will. Is anyone else hearing Will? Okay, just until we get that sorted out, let's move on, and we'll come back to you, Will, don't worry. I'll start again with you, Nikki. Is it possible to pivot in one go? Is that the best advice, to just go, right, this is what I want to do, bang, or is it more of a gradual process?
I think it largely depends on the context and the situation. A personal experience I had back in my kind of mid-20s was I did pivot careers from a kind of more operational career in hotels into HR. And I managed to do that in a fairly kind of swift one step, but that's because an opportunity presented itself in my current organization. So I think when you're in a large, complex organization where there is, multiple opportunities in different departments or different functions and divisions, that is available to you. However, in depending on what your passion and goal is that you're trying to reach for, it might be that there's some mini steps before you get to the ultimate goal. So for me, it's context, but I think both are possible.
Great. What about you, Michelle? In one go? Is it possible?
I think it's based on the individual. So some people are really motivated by doing radical new things they've done before and making a radical leap into a whole new field, genre, or arena. But some people, that would freak them right out. That would be really, they'd lose a lot of confidence from trying to do that. And so for me, when we're thinking about transition, we want to think about what's going to help you to have confidence as you go along. Now, we have a misconception in the world about confidence as if it's something that you should be all the time in all categories, or context confident. But the reality is confidence comes from experience. And we have to do things and practice things to get to a level of confidence. I'm confident to drive the car, but I wasn't the first time I drove, and so on. So when we're making career transitions, we want to have confidence. And for some people, they sustain more confidence by making incremental changes to get to the new thing. And so that's awesome to know that about yourself if you like incremental change. But if you're someone who loves doing new things that challenge you and excite you, going for the big leap is the best thing you could do right now.
Yeah, just dive right in. All right, let's see if we can hear from Will again. We'll go back to that original question of 3 things you'd suggest people can do to move into a new career. Are you with us? Okay, we're still having trouble with Will, so we'll come back when we can. So I'll move back to you, Nikki. I wanted to ask you about attributes that you'd need to highlight. You suggest people should highlight when changing careers, either in their resume or their interview, about, when they're telling their story, because I know we talked earlier in the week on this webinar about sharing your actual story. So what parts do you bring out and highlight, bring to the fore?
This is such a great question, and I think the way I'd probably answer it is in 3 parts. I think in the first part, it's about really showing up as yourself authentically. So show yourself as a person, as a human, and who you are and your energy and your passion. I think that's something that no one else can really replicate because it's very unique to yourself. Secondly, I think it's really great, and I think the storytelling element here is really important. Is what is your story? Where have you had success? Where have you failed and learned? And how do you see your lifelong learning journey continuing? I think being able to contextualize your skills, capabilities, and strengths is really helpful to a prospective new employer because they want to try and imagine you in their organization or in their role and how that might play out. And then thirdly, I think it's about being able to draw on, where you've really kind of navigated complexity, where you've had to show resilience. Because again, these are all things that I think the future of work is really going to require of us. And I know that's something employers are probably already starting to seek in all of their hires, regardless of role.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I think that, as you say, the value of your story, it's so important, isn't it? And it probably wasn't so much 10 years ago, but now with this emphasis on authenticity and how did you get to be where you are today? Michelle, I wanted to ask you a bit more about that. How important is it to highlight that personal story that brought you to where you are today, and your values and your I guess your passions and so on?
I think today employers are hiring much more on values than ever before. And that's because organisations are going through radical change consistently, and we want a team of people who we know are going to be aligned. So, for example, if we want to build a culture that's going to really be inclusive in every form, cognitively inclusive, gender, all the forms of diversity, we want to make sure that we're hiring team members that are going to foster and proliferate that. So being able to be proudly who you are and being really confident in who you are by learning and practicing how to present yourself, I think is absolutely critical. Think about the story. The narrative is important. I think what's important, and most important though, particularly if you're wanting to transfer into something new, is to demonstrate proof and evidence in that narrative that you're a fast learner. So in today's pace, we can't take 24 months for you to learn the new skill or the new role. You're going to have to be productive in 3 months to 6 month period in most environments, and show promise straight away. So you can do that. It's absolutely possible to do that. You just need to demonstrate in that narrative stories of where you've taken on new projects or you've done things you've never done before, and how you learned and how you dealt with the inevitable problems. You don't have to be perfect. I think that's the myth that we all get taught in executive and corporate life, is that you somehow have to be this carbon copy of the perfect employee. And in actual fact, those who are most successful are characters. Do you know what I mean? They're not carbon copies. They're unique, and they're comfortable to demonstrate that uniqueness. And people are forgiving if you're what you talk, who you say you are, and you deliver on what you said you could do. People want people who are real. So show that you can learn, demonstrate that you can learn, but also demonstrate that you're fallible in front of whoever you're speaking. The worst thing you can do is try and be perfect. People don't trust that.
how important, if I can stick with you on that, Michelle, how important is your actual personal story? I know you said to bring a bit of it in, but do employers want to know that journey that brought you to here and made you who you are and today, and those values you speak of?
When you think high growth ventures, so some of the most innovative companies in the world, startup companies and so on. We were talking earlier about Canva, for example, which is one of Australia, if not Australia's fastest growing company at the moment. And, they've got over 1,300 employees. When you think about companies like that, understanding people's personal story is absolutely critical. Because again, we're looking at where we hire someone in a company like that, 6 months time, 12 time, they move around consistently. And that's in most roles in the future of work. People are going to move a lot. Although if you go to a more traditional employer or a more enterprise corporate environment, the person that you're interviewing with may not have an interest in your personal story. So I think it's about reading the situation and having that awareness of what the person's looking for. And you can actually ask, would it be helpful if I shared with you a little bit about my career journey or a little bit about my life journey? And if they look like they are, go for it.
It's about reading the room, isn't it? If I can return, it looks like we've got Will back, but before we go to you, Will, I just wanted to ask Nikki that question on, we talked about the attributes that you should highlight, but I wanted to ask you about finding work, Nikki, the traditional means of recruiters and going online with avenues like Seek. They're not the only ways, are they, to get out there and try to find work? How important is networking and using your old networks, even if it was a different industry?
I think, you're picking up on a really important point here, Jacinta. And I think, yes, there are the traditional platforms and methods. And, I would continue to advise people to use those, particularly the industry-specific ones as well, because you'll be able to, if you've got a specific industry in mind, that would be a good way of kind of getting into that network. But I think networking is really important. I think, also having a really diverse network is really important. It's something I strive to achieve as a goal, because the more diverse your network, the more opportunities will come to you through conversation, and you never know where those things can lead. So I think also the great value of a diverse network is if you do have some ideas or passions in mind, as Michelle said, if you're that person wanting to take either that big leap or those more incremental steps, then to be able to reach out to someone in your network and say, hey, this is an area I'm interested in. I know you've got connections, or I know you've got experience in this. What would you advise? What would you guide? What can I build that I don't currently have? How can I leverage what I do currently have? And what does the future of that industry look like? And what should I be doing now to really help me get there? So for me, your network is a really important tool, but equally an important support network when you're out looking for that next step.
Yeah, and everything you talk about, Michelle and Nikki, it all sounds scary. Even when you talk, you sort of heart races and think, oh, do I have to go and have that scary conversation? I think, though, now it's almost like the perfect time to be looking for work, because there's no stigma attached to it. Everyone's doing it and everyone's reframing, and we're all supporting. I'm sensing a real support out there in the workspace. Will, let's try our luck with you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, here he is. Fantastic.
Hurrah!
Great, because it would not have been the same conversation without you in this. Can you tell us 3 things that you suggest people do when they're pivoting to an entirely new career?
Of course. Yeah. So I think, firstly, be brave, be bold. It's a big step to change career. It can be quite daunting, but it doesn't happen overnight, and there are no shortcuts. I think people are often looking for a quick and easy way to do something, so it takes a bit of determination. But if you want to make it happen, it will. It's about taking action and not just thinking about it sometimes. The second thing is to talk to people. Connect, network. As it sounds like we've been talking about the importance of networking. Learn about the career that you want to go into. I think you would be surprised at the variety of backgrounds that people come from. I think Michelle had mentioned Pablo. Like, people come from all walks of life and all different experiences. And I think often we have the the feeling that, that person that's a software developer has always been a software developer, but actually they might have come from a very different background before that. So talking to people, you will be surprised what you learn. And then I think thirdly, it's focus on your personal brand. What's unique about you, what makes your story compelling to others. As a career changer, invest time and effort in crafting your career narrative, so others can, I guess, more easily connect the dots between what you've done and what you want to do.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's no longer, as it used to be, a linear trajectory in your career, that we're all hopping around and using skills and adapting, and there's new industries popping up and so on. Would you say that's the case?
100%, 100%.
Forgotten to unmute myself. I guess it's worth highlighting for people that they no longer have to think that this is the career I've done till now and that's all I can do and that's the only skills I've got. Very much there's an environment, there's a culture for reinvention. Would you say?
I think that's the beauty of the world that we live in now, is that you can reinvent yourself. I think we often see as well and hear about people having a kind of mid-career crisis. I think it often happens around the age of about 30. You'll see people going off to university, studying a degree for the career that they want to go into. They leave university, join a grad program, work for 4 or 5 years, and then kind of as they hit about the age of 30, think, what am I doing? This isn't what I want to be doing. And they completely pivot and completely change. And I think, nowadays it's a lot easier to kind of reinvent, as you say, and really kind of shift into a completely different direction.
Great, Will, thank you. Great to have you as part of the conversation. Michelle, I wanted to return to you now and ask you, so in Tuesday's session, I know that wasn't your session, but there was a big conversation about strengths. And with Fingerprint for Success, I know that that's something that you focus on too. How important is it for people to identify their individual strengths in preparation for a career change or a new role?
Yeah, I think it's a really awesome question, Jacinta, because there's a big debate, isn't there, in career development around how much we focus on developing our weaknesses or our blind spots and how much we focus on strengths. And we take a very much a strengths-based approach when it comes to motivational bias. So when I talk about motivational bias, I'm talking about what do you pay attention to? What do you get energy from? What brings you joy? What gets you excited? And when I talk about blind spots, I'm referring to things that suck and drain your energy that you can do, but it's really exhausting for you to do it. So a great example is I'm really motivated by big picture thinking. I love having abstract conversations, talking about visions, talking about what's possible. But when it comes to structure and planning, I can do it very well. My very first career was all about organizing and planning. I can do it, but I go home. Well, I'm at home always working at the moment, but you know what I mean? I end up at the end of the day super exhausted. And that's a really draining activity for me. Now, if we're going to change careers and you're going to go about trying to find a career and you're spending 80% of your time in areas that drain your energy, you are not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be happy. You're not going to experience the possibility of you being fulfilled in your work. Now, not everyone's, and it's important to know, not everyone's looking to be fulfilled in their work. Some people really want to get joy and pleasure and satisfaction from the rest of their life, hobbies and other study and other learning and other activities. But if you do want to get some joy from your work, being able to find roles and activities that play to those motivational biases brings you joy and happiness. And when we're in those states, we're in what Chicks and Mahaley call flow. And when we're in flow, amazing things happen.
Oh, yeah. We've got to be in flow as much as we can, right? Michelle, you are about to launch the first AI program. It just sounds extraordinary, specialising in development and transformational coaching. How on earth is that going to work? Please explain. How can a robot help us with finding our inner purpose?
Well, you're right. It is really challenging. It's a very big, challenging project. So I've spent the last 25 years or so as a coach, but I've also developed coaching psychology models, multiple models, which some of the things we've actually written about. They've been used in universities and so on. So we've created these conversational coaching models, and we've trained, thousands and thousands of coaches to be able to use those models as well. So we've got these great linguistic models. And as you well know, everybody I'm sure listening, that at the moment we saw, 6 or 12 months ago, Google, their big development was that they could book a haircut with a robot. So as you, conversational, what's called AI, is really, really challenging. But because we've got these linguistic models that we've already been using with humans, we've got a really, really unusual and unique opportunity to be able to do that. So we've got our working prototype out. People are able to go through a 6 to 8 week coaching program where they're able to set goals, and then 2 times a week inside, say, a messenger chat environment or similar, able to go through and work on activities throughout the week and then be held accountable to what those are. So they're able to develop new mindsets, able to develop new skills, able to develop new abilities. And so the way that works is that as new people start to interact with our coach, the coach gets smarter and learns more of the models and will end up eventually being as good as a full human coach. At least we hope.
So for someone who is just studying coaching like I am, does that mean that this is the end of our industry?
No, definitely not at all. So I've always had a big goal from day one as a coach that I want to make coaching, which is self-actualization, available to everybody. And at the moment, the way that a coach needs to run their business, coaching ends up being exceptionally expensive and ends up only being like elite athletes or, the elite senior executives or entrepreneurs and so on who get access to it. And so my big vision and dream is to be democratizing self-actualization so that everybody can access it. So there'll still be a space for human coaching where those people can afford, who already can afford that coaching. But this will be available to anyone who's got an internet connection, so that self-actualization, growth and learning shouldn't just be for the elite.
Oh, I just love that. It's great with my journo hat on. That's a fantastic story. Just tell me quickly, when's it going to launch?
So 4 weeks we launch.
Oh, that is so exciting. Incredible. Thanks for elaborating on that, Michelle. And Nikki, I wanted to ask you, we, as we've discussed and we all know, there's been huge disruption in employment and careers, of course, due to COVID. So a lot of people are, as we've discussed, changing industries altogether and changing sectors altogether. What advice do you give people who are doing that and not following that linear model?
Some really great ideas that have already been spoken about so far, and I'd build on those, I think. And Michelle talked about, is this a big leap or incremental steps, and also what's right for you as an individual. And one of the additional pieces of advice I would give is, if you've got an eye on a particular sector or an industry, is actually understand the story of that industry or organization, and really understand, who is their customer, who are they creating value for, and really try and connect with that. Because what I've found is, whilst you might be bringing something different, if you can connect with where they are putting value and focus, that will open up a really great conversation. And I think one of the other things I'm starting to observe is industries and companies are really looking for that kind of cognitive diversity. So there is this kind of openness now to different backgrounds, different ways of thinking, and different journeys to the point that you're at. So really leverage that. And finally, I'd probably say, and we touched on this a little bit, and I know Will's probably going to have some great insights for us as well, is where you do recognize those gaps or development areas, how can you fill those? Like, what's available to you in the marketplace? It doesn't always have to be large investments or MBAs. There's lots of micro-credentialing opportunities now. There's coaches you can leverage and work with. So what makes sense for you and what's going to be best for you in your situation? So where can you get that external support and development from?
Thanks, Nikki. Fabulous advice as always. Will, trying our luck with you again. Now, you are just doing absolutely fascinating work at the moment, so I wanted to hear more about that. Your company is called Academy XI. You use Glow Up Careers, who are running today's event, of course. You use their tool to prepare people for the future of work and to teach them new skills. Can you explain some of these skills and the terminology used? We hear terminology like UI and UX, and you banded them around as if they're part of the vernacular. Can you explain to us lay people what that is all about?
Of course. So UX, user experience, and UI design, user interface design, focus on the interaction between human, kind of real human users, like you and me, and everyday products and services, essentially. So things like websites, apps, even, fridge freezers and coffee machines and your car. And it's a really varied discipline. So it's combining things such as aspects of psychology, business, design and tech, market research. And so, user experience designers are expected to wear many different hats. So, as a UX designer, you're there to make products and technology usable, essentially, enjoyable, accessible for humans. They might work as part of a wider product team. They will often find themselves bridging a gap between the user, maybe a software development team, business stakeholders, and very much for UX designers, it's their job first and foremost to advocate for the end user or the customer, essentially. So it's fascinating stuff.
Oh, it is, and it sounds like a real growth industry. Can you possibly foresee how many roles might come into this sector?
I'd love to say millions, thousands, hundreds plus. I don't think I can put a number on it, but we're definitely going to see more roles in this space. As technology is rapidly advancing year after year, the demand for these types of roles increase. And I think, in fact, with COVID, we've seen the need for more digital products and services become far more apparent. And I think that's just going to continue, year after year.
Do you have to have a technical or a design background or some sort of specific skills to be?
No, not at all. So many soft skills come into play, such as collaboration skills, communication skills, facilitating. People come from all different types of backgrounds. We've seen people on our courses come from retail, from hospitality, from education, finance. As I just said as well, as a discipline, it combines things like business, marketing, psychology. So, it really is the type of role and the type of industry where people come from all walks of life. And I think, as Nikki mentioned as well, having that diverse thought actually helps you create better products. People from different backgrounds with different ways of thinking, with different experiences, will create better, more usable products for the client and for their end users, for their customers. Having people that can think about things like accessibility. I'm, for example, if I was a user of something, but I was visually impaired, having someone with that can create a tool or a product that thinks about that type of diversity and that type of accessibility. So, I think, it's limitless in that sense.
Well, that sounds very exciting and music to people's ears probably listening today. So people who are listening who are interested in this and think they'd like to change gears and step into these types of roles, how do they go about it?
Look, I think, like I said at the start, it's there is no shortcut, but it's doable. And it can be easy, and everyone is different. Signing up to a course with someone like us at Academy XI, that's one way. Obviously, there's a cost attached to that. You can also teach yourself. There are heaps of books you can read and blogs and videos on YouTube. There are sometimes free courses through different providers. Finding a mentor, speaking to people, learning about the industry. I think if you are passionate enough and you're enthusiastic enough and you want to make that change, it's doable. You can make it happen. And hopefully, as I say, with things rapidly changing and more opportunities in this kind of space coming up, I think we're going to see a real demand for those skills. So yeah, I think it is definitely doable.
I was about to ask everybody, and so I'm going to just stick with you, Will, first about what you see as jobs for the future. Obviously, you've discussed all of these kind of roles. Is there any other industries that you think are going to become growth industries?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think what is interesting is definitely in light of COVID, businesses across the board are becoming tech companies and are becoming digital companies. So, even moving into, the retail space, maybe working for, large supermarkets like Coles and Woolies, they are becoming tech companies. You know, they have a huge online service. So I think every industry is starting to feel the effect of kind of the digital movement. You know, perhaps not so much working in things like travel at the moment, for example. But, you know, really thinking about, okay, where do my passions lie and what interests me? And are there advances in those areas? And what impact is the digital world having on them? So I think that's what we're seeing is a real shift from, you know, companies being quite staid and traditional, and everyone having to adapt to this kind of newfound world that we're in.
That gives us all hope. And Michelle, what about you? Do you want to add to that? What do you see as some skills and jobs for the future?
Look, I think there's so much we don't know yet, which is the really exciting thing. We're in a very, you know, unprecedented time in many ways with the pandemic. We're in the world in terms of technology. I think there's a big focus on sustainability and how technology is going to support sustainability in the future. So, like Will said, looking at any organisation having to become a tech organisation, but also we're at the point in time in history where sustainability is equally as important. And so you're finding that employers that have a much bigger, at least ethical and futuristic employers really care about these things. So you might feel like you can't be too discerning when you're in a position where you're lost your role. But if you're able to choose between two companies, one that does have a focus on sustainability, diversity and inclusion and cares about these factors, and another one that doesn't, you would choose that company every single time because they're going to look after you as an employee, they're going to grow and develop you because that's the ethos of what sustainability means. It's not just sustainability for the planet, and all of the environmental factors that we should care about. It's also sustainability of humans and not driving people to, you know, really bad outcomes at work. The world has changed. You cannot treat people like a commodity. And the things that are opening up right now around most people working from home and the flexibility and all of these things that the world has been trying to get to happen, it's here. So it's a very exciting time for you to be able to map lifestyle into the choices that you make. You could choose to leave the city now and go and have your farm and raise your children in an environment that you might choose that might be much more sustainable from that perspective for you. You've got more choices. So even though you might feel like you are in a stuck position at the first moment and you're shocked and you're scared, it's very normal to feel like that. Once you accept and embrace and you stepped into what could be possible. Where are you going to live? What kind of work are you going to do? How do you want to craft and create your life? The cost of living, for example, if you take that path of moving out of the city, cost of living changes, right? The jobs you then might choose to do are going to be very different to heavy mortgage in the middle of the city, right? So use this incredible moment and optimize it and capitalize on it.
Got to remember to unmute. I was going to say, I love the way you're talking about it being an exciting time because there's been so much focus on this being a really tough time, which it has been and still is for so many people who are out of work. But actually, there is a flip side to that, isn't there? That it's an opportunity to find something that's perhaps more aligned with who we are.
Yes, definitely. And that's where that awareness comes from. And that's what I'd say is I think it's so exciting what Glow Up Careers and Yvonne and the team have built in this week-long opportunity for you to learn about the steps and processes, but actually working directly with Glow Up Careers and being able to work with a coach. They've got a really beautiful process that can take you that awareness about who am I, what is important to me, and using some technologies like our own, at Fingerprint for Success, you can take an assessment which measures the things that you're most motivated in, and sometimes it gives you a language to start to talk to yourself and a language to start to make some decisions around what those next steps are. And sometimes we just need that language because it's all happening inside of us, it's all confusing. So having that external support helps you to make sense and make meaning of those things.
Yeah, perfect time for a coach by the sounds of it, a real one as well as an AI one. Nikki, can I turn to you and ask you about transferable skills? It's a term we also hear. Can you explain what that is and how people can transfer their skills?
Absolutely. I think transferable skills is really recognizing if you have a strength or a capability that you do in your current role or you've done in a previous role, how that could actually add value in a new company or a new function. So, you may have to use critical thinking in your current job. Critical thinking can transfer into another role. It might be used differently, might be applied differently, but it's very much transferable. So I think it goes back to that kind of initial advice around, what's your strengths, your joys, your passions, what are you good at? What would you love to learn? And, as Michelle said a couple of times, taking time out for that self-awareness and really understanding what you bring and how you can actually bring that in different contexts and different organizations. The other thing I'd mention as well is it goes beyond skills for me. When you think about the future of work, I think actually what we're all learning, and 2020 has probably been the biggest teacher, is some of those attributes around resilience, being able to learn but equally unlearn, being able to view the world differently, to pivot and say, okay, something external is happening to my role or my business, which means I can no longer operate in the way I have been to this point. So what else is possible? What is the opportunity? How can I use this moment to try something new or do something different? And what does my customer need from me right now, given the circumstances? So I think also thinking about your attributes is a really important part of what the future of work looks like. And, it's very exciting. As Michelle says, we don't know what future roles are going to look like, and that's actually really exciting. But what we do know is those roles will need attributes, behaviors, capabilities. So my advice is really focus in on those, and that will really set you up for success.
Yeah, Will, I wanted to ask you briefly about transferable skills. Thanks for that, Nikki, as well, because I think that term, I love it. It's such a positive term, isn't it? And people listening to this now will be maybe having light bulbs go off for the first time, that the skills that they've got can actually be adapted to something else. Can you give us an example of some transferable skills and how they can be used to move into an entirely new job or industry?
For sure, of course. I can think of a great example, actually. In my previous role, I worked for a software consulting company, and we actually worked and partnered with a software engineering bootcamp. So very similar to kind of what we do at Academy XI. So people that were career changers or wanted to change career would go and learn how to code and write software for a 10, 12-week course. Very intensive. We, from a diversity point of view, really embraced the fact that we wanted people that would come and build software through a different lens. And a fantastic example is we hired someone through that program, and she used to work previously as an operating theatre nurse, and she learned how to code. Now, the feedback we got when she started working with a team, so a team of software developers building some software for a client, and they have a code build, and obviously kind of you're adding to it bit by bit, and they had flashing lights. So if the code broke, you could see, and a red light would flash, and all the team would panic. But she stayed completely calm and cool because, as she said, we're not saving lives, we're just writing code. And she used to be able to just bring all the team back together, calm them down, and they were like, she's the best asset, because previously people, the developers that have always been developers would freak out, panic, and think it was the worst thing. But she just had this amazing skill, having worked in such a high pressure environment as an operating theatre nurse. She could keep her cool, and it was great for the team. It was great for the way that they all worked together, and just took that stress and pressure off. So transferable skills, you do not know where they're going to come into play. It's a great thing.
Oh, I just love that example. It's fantastic. It's something she would never have thought of, no doubt. And
Yeah.
Michelle, quickly, do you have an example of a transferable skill you'd like to share, or perhaps either a particular person or a skill?
No, I don't have anything in addition from what I think I've already said. In terms of, I did have something though, if I could just add in around transferable skills, is more around giving yourself permission to talk about achievements. In Australia, we have a culture, and you don't know how insidious it is, where you don't give yourself permission to be able to say what you achieved. So get some coaching, figure that out, talk to your partner, talk to a good friend, look in the mirror, and be very comfortable to say, I achieved this, and this can achieve this in a new environment, and be bold and brave, as Will said. but we've got to talk about our achievements. If you go to the US and if you plan to work there, they are 10x, 1,000x the amount around achievements. We're so humble here, and that's what makes Australians so beautiful. But when you're going for a role, please don't be humble. Tell people your experience, tell them what you achieved, and tell them how your transferable skill or soft, whatever it is, will work.
And do you think that industries and employers are more open to that now as well, of celebrating success? And as we said before, it's not just what you've achieved in your career, it's who you are as a person as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Jacinta.
Yeah, so the environment's changing. So in summary, because we are going to have to wrap up soon, does anyone want to add anything on that idea of, because let's end on a positive note, on that this is a potentially exciting time to be recreating ourselves and maybe turning to those careers that not other people thought we should do, but that we really want to do. Asking for a friend. Will, do you want to say anything on that?
Sure. I think just my kind of, I guess, closing advice around that is we as humans, I think, have the tendency to jump to conclusions or make assumptions. And I think often, if you are wanting to change career, be explicit and tell your story. That's what is compelling. If you're kind of missing some gaps, or I can't connect the dots and kind of say, why have you moved from real estate to being a UX designer? If you're not telling me that story, I will look at the next candidate more than likely. But if you're telling me that story in a compelling way, and I'm like, oh wow, okay, so as a real estate agent, you were meeting customers every Saturday morning, and you saw how they were interacting as they were walking around the property they were viewing, and you saw a gap there, and you saw that it was the way that you wanted to shift careers. Tell me that story. Have that on your LinkedIn profile. Have that in your CV. And then I'm like, wow, that's great. That person's really thought about it. If it's just a black and white real estate agent, UX designer, I'm going to think, well, I haven't got that much experience. So, what's the reason? I don't know why. If you're telling me that, that makes me interested. That makes me kind of want to, sit up and pay attention to you. So yeah, just be explicit. I think tell your story. Everyone is unique in that sense.
I love that idea of that personal story coming back in again. And Nikki, would you say that we should even include that story in our, as Will said, in our LinkedIn profile, and not just keep that all corporate and neat?
Personally, I would advise yes. I think, the thing Will has just really highlighted there for me is we all make connections between information very differently because every brain is different. So our job is to help others see the connections we've made. And we do that through telling our story. And I think the other reason why bringing a little bit of yourself into the story is important is because you have gained capabilities, resilience, skills in your non-professional life as well. And that, for me, is as equally valuable as what you've gained in a professional environment. So I think bring yourself, bring your whole person to a conversation, because, employers who value that and open up to that are going to create a very meaningful experience for you and a joyful experience for you. So I personally would say go for it. But I think every individual is different. And I think, you've got to do what works for you, and you do you. But I think it's great if you can bring your story.
And Michelle, I guess to turn to you, I think that it's a fine line, isn't it? Because you don't want to be pouring out your entire history of your life and going through the whole saga. You sort of cherry pick what feeds into who you are today and how you want to be perceived today, Michelle.
Yeah, definitely. I think you want to pique interest and make the critical connections. Will's example is just such a perfect example, Will. Thank you for sharing it. So yes, give some, but leave open loops where people want to learn more.
Okay, great. We are unfortunately coming very much to, only 3 minutes to go, so we're going to have to wrap up this session. Thank you to all of you, just extraordinary insights there. To Michelle and Nikki and to Will, I know that I've just learned an enormous amount today, and I think it's an exciting time, as I said, and I think it's very tough as well. People are out of work, and people are having to dig deep and start again, but it's also potentially a time to really get in tune with the career perhaps we want to be a part of, and as you've outlined today, there are ways to do that. So I think you would have given people a lot of hope and a lot of ideas here today. So thanks so much for your time. And we're going to bring in Yvonne now from Glow Up Careers to...
Amazing. Wow, that was amazing. And thank you so much. And Jacinta, thank you for being really open and authentic and sharing your story as well. I think, sometimes people, hide their stories or they're not open. And I think just acknowledging and, saying this has happened, but there's a positivity, and now you're writing your book. I know you've been emceeing an event this week, and it's so exciting to see what your future brings. So I'd love to hear from you. What are kind of some of the things that you've got out of this conversation, and has it changed your mindset on there's there can be a bit of a dark cloud about redundancy, and yesterday we talked, a lot of the speakers on these sessions are motivational speakers, and they talked about at the start of COVID when they lost their businesses overnight. The first 2 to 4 weeks were very dark, but when they started to really look at it as an opportunity and the exciting things that could come out of it, they've been able to really reframe the thinking and see this as a huge opportunity. So Jacinta, what is what's in store for you, and what is there anything profound that you've got taken from this conversation?
Oh, so much. I'm going to be absorbing it as I go along. That's why I kept forgetting to turn off my mute button, because turn on my, unmute myself, because I was too intrigued with what everyone was saying. But everyone just had such wonderful insights. I think it's really important what Michelle was saying about taking that time to process, because you've got to do that, because if you immediately just leap into something else, then you're not dealing with those feelings. And I think that it's, as I said, it's an exciting time for people as well, while acknowledging how tough it is. And I'm in that boat. I've been in that boat, so I know. But I just happened to be in a place personally where I saw this as an opportunity to reassess perhaps things that I've always been interested in, and go, well, is there an opportunity to turn that into work? So I saw that reinforced today. And I think that idea of the transferable skills is really exciting. That I'm not even talking about myself here, but generally for people to be able to think about those skills that they've got in their industry that don't necessarily just have to apply to that industry, because that's how we've been taught, is that the industry you've been working in and the job you've been doing, that's it. So go and find, everyone says to me, are you going to go and get another newsreader job? Everyone just assumes that's what I would do. Maybe, but no, I think I'd quite like to do something else, So it's that taking the skills you've got, the experience, the contacts, and not necessarily thinking you have to stay there, and go and see where else that can be applied. It's positive, it's enlightening, it's exciting, and it's also a chance for personal growth. Great opportunity.
Amazing. Oh, thank you. And, I think it's also a time to help others, and you have all done that in a huge way. And, as I said, all of the speakers and our Cisco team, everyone involved in this event has, got this real passion to help others during this time. And we hope that you, the viewers, have got some gold tips, and we'll be collating all of that. All of these videos from every session will be available for free forever on our YouTube channel, so Glow Up Careers YouTube channel. And we hope you can share and watch some of the others. We're ending this afternoon with an amazing finale, our grand final of inspiration. We've got 3 of the most inspirational stories for you to hear. So 2:00, don't miss it. And we've also delighted to have Anton Enos, who will be moderating that session. So thanks for joining us. I'm just about to share a QR code. So if everyone can get out their cameras and hold your camera up to this QR code, that's a way that you can connect with me and with our team at Glow Up Careers. Any questions that you've got to follow up with the panel, we can connect you and put you in touch. All of our speakers have a page on our BridgingCareers.live website, so we have links to in there that you can connect. And we're really hoping to follow this up with further events and podcasts, and really be able to bring advice and practical tips and career coaching to everyone through the work that we do, and the work that we do with refugees and new migrants as well. So thanks for joining, and we'll see you at 2:00 this afternoon for our final session.